Hello everyone, Viking Guitar here, and we're doing a quick little video today on some ways you can handle processing during routing in Reaper. It's going to be a quick video because it's Thanksgiving morning here, so if you're in the USA like I am, happy Thanksgiving. Anyway, on to the lesson. So let's say you have a situation where you have a track that you want to send to another track, and you want that audio to get impacted when it hits here. For example, let's say you have 3 different tracks that you're sending to a common reverb send, but you want each one of those tracks EQ'd differently on the way in. However, here's the kicker. You don't want that EQ to impact the source audio. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So right now, we have a normal, boring old track with me saying the word test.
Test.
Very thrilling. The only other thing going on right now in this Reaper session is there's an empty item all the way out here just to make sure playback doesn't stop at the end here. So let's create the rest of our hypothetical here. We have 2 other tracks that all have audio sources. We'll call this source 2 and source 3. And let's say we want to send all of those guys to this receive track, for lack of a better word. So, if it's a situation where we want to put, a reverb on here and have this be our reverb bus. So each one of these tracks just has the voice.
Test. Tet. Tet.
And if we take all of them, hold shift and route them all here, they will all come into this track and be processed through the reverb together.
Test.
It's very exciting. But let's say that we want to EQ each one of these differently before they come in, but we don't want that EQ to be audible here.
Test.
So one way to do this would be to minimize all this. Let's remove all of the routing on those. And let's treat this as a folder track. We'll create 3 more tracks. We'll call them Interim 1, Interim 2, and Interim 3. We're going to route source 1 to Interim 1, source 2 to Interim 2, and source 3 to Interim 3. We're going to make all these guys child tracks of that folder track. And now, if we want to see what the routing matrix looks like, where are you? There we are. Ignore all of this crazy BS at the bottom. Basically, we have source 1, we have all this stuff going. So source 1 goes to Interim 1, source 2 to Interim 2, source 3 to Interim 3. And then as these come in, what we can do is we can put whatever EQing we want on these. So let's set this first one to be only the high end. We'll copy it here and set this guy to, that's the wrong band, be just the mid-range. And then this guy is just going to be the low range. So if we listen to, let's turn off the reverb real quick and we'll listen to each interim track. Probably helps if that's unmuted.
Test. Test. Test.
So that's how that's happening. And if we run them through here,
Test.
not super obvious what's going on because of the nature of the plugins we've chosen. But this is one way to do it. You basically route each track to an interim track, do whatever processing you want there, and then all of those go up to a folder track here. But right now, if we have 3 sources and 1 receiving track, we end up with 7 tracks, which is a little cumbersome to me. So we're going to do this a different way. Let's remove all those. We're going to set up a new receive track. And to demonstrate things here, we're going to use delay as an example. So let's add a delay here. First we're going to do the other part. We're going to take all 3 of these tracks. We're going to route them to this one. But what we're going to do is for each track, we're going to go into the routing and set it to 4 track channels instead of 2. This is going to give us some wiggle room to play with. And now on the receives, we want to make sure that the audio that comes from each track, it's sending the 3 to 4, the auxiliary tracks, and it's becoming tracks 1 and 2 on the receive track. So in case you're not overly familiar with this, what's happening is each one of these tracks, we'll just mute all these for the sake of argument, now have 4 tracks of audio. Track 1 and 2 are your standard old left and right that come in and out like normal. It goes to the master bus, it outputs through your speakers. There's also track 3 and 4, which are referred to as auxiliary tracks in this case, and those don't automatically go to the master bus. But what they are doing is going to this track, which will then convert them to tracks 1 and 2 here and send them to the master bus. So right now this isn't doing much, but I'm going to show you why this is important. And we're going to use delay as an example. So let's go back to source 1. We're going to add redelay. We're going to turn the dry all the way off. We're going to set this to 1000 milliseconds just to prove a point. So now if we play this, mind you, all these tracks are off. If we play the source track,
test,
we have a 1000 millisecond delay before that audio hits. But what we can do is up in the plug-in pin connector here, we can dictate how this plug-in handles the different channels coming in. You can see right now it's receiving tracks 1 and 2 from the track, which is normal, and outputting it on 1 and 2 like we expect. So anything that happens in this plug-in, we hear on the track. However, if we change this to 3 and 4, this receive track is still muted, but now we will, we didn't want that. Now we will not hear that delay.
test, test,
But it is happening. You see the meter jump up there? That's because meters is set to multi-channel peaks. So we're still seeing audio 3 and 4 as it's happening there, even though we're not hearing it. Let's set this to stereo for right now.
test,
You can see we get the first one, but not any of the multi-channel stuff. Let's do this for the others just so you can look at the meters and it'll demonstrate what we're talking about. Anywho, so now what we have is source 1. We have a delay that's not impacting the audio on source 1, but is impacting audio 3 and 4. That audio 3 and 4 is being sent to the receive track. So now when we play this, we're going to hear it happen here at the start, and then the delay will happen on the receive track.
test, test,
And so using a similar process, we can have different processing on each one of these. Now I'm just copying this plugin over to these other tracks. It already has that pin connector thing set up, and we're going to set this to 2500. And now when we play back all of them, all of these 3 will play simultaneously at the same time where the item is, but we will see these staggered delays here because we have delays of 1000 milliseconds, 1750, and 2500.
test, 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 test,
So this is a really cool thing. Let's say you're routing a whole, set of vocals to a reverb bus. You don't want to change the actual source tracks, but you want different EQ happening to those before they hit the reverb track. This is one way you could do it. You could set up, instead of redelay, you could set up an instance of ProQ or ReQ or whatever, dial in whatever settings you want. Here we go. This is perfect. This is exactly how you should EQ a vocal line. And then up here, just make sure that your plug-in pin connector is grabbing audio from 1 and 2 for inputs 1 and 2 and putting it out on 3 and 4 for outputs 1 and 2. So now, if we, which one was that? That was this one. If we listen to this here, let's mute everything else.
test, test,
Sounds normal, but if we listen to it here,
test, test.
anyway, there you go. Not the quickest lesson, but should give you some things to work with. I hope this helps with any audio routing issues you might be having. Once again, to everyone in the United States, I wish you a happy Thanksgiving and keep the world metal.